How y'all doing out there today? I hope that y'all are having a wonderful day, man. As always, welcome to the channel. Taking a bath. The bathroom's the only place you can place your gadgets in peace. As you guys come in, guys, give me a thumbs up. I'm gonna go ahead and check Facebook, make sure that we're live on Facebook. Also, I have the comments turned on. But we're gonna have a wonderful time here today, guys. We want to really dive down into some things that's been going on, not only in America but across the world. Mental health. We had nurse practitioner Nicole Smith on here once before to talk about pain relief, and we kind of got into a conversation towards the end about mental health, and we invited her back on to talk about that. So I don't want to go ahead and, you guys know I'm a chatterbox and take up all of the time. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce her once again, Miss Nicole Smith, nurse practitioner based out of Phoenix, Arizona. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be back.
Hey, we had so many positive comments from the last show, and again, we are thrilled to death to have you back. Now, a couple of things
I'm
I was
happy to
thinking
be
about,
here.
a couple of things I was thinking about the other day was COVID, right? And think about how
Hmm.
many people suffered with COVID and survived, how many people lost loved ones, right? And
Right,
now
right.
we're dealing with inflation, and people is, some people is finding it hard to make ends meet. So once again, I think it's a perfect conversation for the perfect time. But let me go ahead and let you tell the people exactly what it is you do. Introduce yourself better
Okay.
than I did.
You did pretty well.
Thank you.
I'm Nicole Smith, FNP, which is Family Practice Nurse Practitioner. Also, mental health is pretty much my background. Um, I own a ketamine infusion clinic, and ketamine is I use it low dose for mental health, PTSD, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and things of that nature. Um, I've been doing this in the healthcare business for over 20 years, so I know my
Wow.
stuff.
Uh, how you doing out there this afternoon, Uno? So tell me what we touched on the last conversation. For the people that's watching us live or that's going to watch us on a replay, this is their first time seeing you. Tell us exactly
Mhm.
what got you into this line of work.
Um, Pretty much as far as mental health, working in the emergency department, I would run into a lot of people that struggle with mental health, and I was just able to communicate with them a lot better than everybody else, and kind of able to reach them and talk to them on their level and kind of meet them where they're at. And I developed a passion for mental health, and especially for Black people, minority people in general. It was also one of my passions because mental health is so stigmatized in the African American community. And I felt like that I could be that advocate for the culture pretty much because I'm going to be me, and I'm going to talk to whoever it is in a way that they can understand it and explain it, and they kind of, you know, develop that lane, and I'm trying to ride in it right now.
Would you say there's a bias for people that have mental health illnesses in the healthcare system? For example, people that have mental health issues, when they visit the ER, they might get treated differently than other people.
Absolutely. Minorities in general, healthcare just disproportionate, period. Even the way that minorities are treated, not that they're treated negatively, it's just they don't, hospitals, healthcare don't treat a lot of minorities. So they usually get undertreated a lot of times. And when people don't understand your culture or your background and things like that, like how we have, gender roles in African American men, especially, taught to be strong, not to necessarily show your feelings. And African Americans in general, you always hear, don't go out there telling my business. So you can't tell them what's really going on in the household, and that's just a cultural thing. And we hold that in, and healthcare providers, it's hard for us to, assess that when you're holding it in. So it's important as healthcare providers that we identify like nonverbal cues in different cultures so that we can understand and kind of, that thing when they're like, I'm here, I see you, So it's the same thing. It's like, I understand what you're going through. I know you're not saying what's wrong, but I can see what's happening, and you can kind of pull them to the side and kind of, hey, is this what's going on? Because if you initiate that, sometimes people would, express how they're feeling more than just being forthcoming with mental health issues.
So obviously you're a nurse practitioner, so you spent a few years in school, correct?
Oh well, yeah, more than a few.
So
Spent a lot of years.
a little, a
Yeah,
little birdie told me that currently you are back in school.
I am. I am. Yes. I'm getting my psychiatric um, certification. So I'll be a psych mental health nurse practitioner in 7 months.
So
So you see that long alphabet behind my name? It'll be another five. It'll be another 5 letters, y'all.
hey,
Just
anybody that's watching, we had a long discussion behind the scenes about those alphabets, and I say put all of them up there. She's like, nah, I just want to put that I'm a, I got a family practice. Like, put everything up there, please. So thank you
right.
for doing that. Thank you for doing that. So the reason why I brought up you going back to school is because you have this passion. You decide to go back to school so you can serve the culture that you just was mentioning.
Right. Right.
As a black male, as you say, mentioned earlier, sometimes black, well, minorities in general, get treated, less than up to par in some instance. But
Hmm.
as related to African American men, can mental health stress issues like affect us physically?
Oh, absolutely. When classic signs of depression in general is when you don't want to get out of bed, you're just not motivated to get out of bed. You have this apathy where you're just laying down all day, you're just sad, you're just it's almost in the sense of a grieving process sometimes when you just feel like you lost something and you're just sad. It also could cause, pain, just body pain, all over body pain. Depression could cause that, difficulty concentrating. You know, you interrupting people frequently, just can't concentrate on what you're reading, you can't recite back what you just read, difficulty sleeping, either you're sleeping too much or you're not sleeping enough or you're not rested or you're waking up every 2 or 3 hours. And then once that happens, now you're confused and you can't get your job done, you can't do anything because it's all cloudy up there when you're depressed. That can those symptoms could definitely uh, you know, affect you physically. I'm sorry.
So, so I'm gonna be real vulnerable right now, but we're family. You're my sister, so you know, I'm just gonna talk to you like it's just was you and I in the room, right?
Okay.
Sometimes I I I get fixated on something, right? So I have a goal in mind, and the only way I know how to accomplish it is like, man, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go, right? And so some of those symptoms you were saying, like I don't sleep well. My mind constantly running. I'm constantly trying to, either think of new creative ways to generate income or either community issues. Like I'm always thinking of improving and improving and improving. But then something like, as you know, we're supposed to launch our website and we hit a snag in the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
We not sleeping, staying up all night because as we was talking behind the scenes, the companies are overseas. So now I'm irritated, right? But I still have to perform at a high level. So I'm outside, I'm smiling, I'm shaking hands, kissing babies, and
Mm-hmm.
waving, right? But
Right.
I'm falling apart behind the scenes. how can men, get to the point to where we can share information like that?
Um, it's who you choose to share it with. That's the thing, If you have a person that you feel comfortable expressing how you feel, you could definitely express it to them. But if they don't understand or don't know what to do for you, it's kind of like you're just, expressing your feelings. I think it's important to find a therapist or provider that you're comfortable with. You don't, just because you've been assigned a psychiatrist, a therapist, provide a primary care provider, doesn't mean you have to stick with that person. You're able to go through a list, read their bio, figure out, who can you feel more comfortable with, so that you can express how you feel, and without, being judged. And a lot of cultures like to stick to, they feel more comfortable with a provider of their own, race or gender or whatever the case. Even if it's not that, maybe it's something that you saw in that person that you're like, hey, I feel that I can communicate with them. So I think it's important for you to actually find a right provider that fits you. You can interview them, because you're hiring us, you know, ultimately. So you can, before you say, I'm going to make you my therapist, doctor, whatever the case, let's chat. How long have you been doing this? What's your passions? What's this? What's that? So, yeah, this person, I feel comfortable talking to. And that's where you got to start.
You mentioned something that's very important, especially with my experience working in the community. That wanting like it, like community work, you can't work in the community without having a few principles, right? And those principles come with keywords: resilient, or resiliency, and the other one is culture.
Hmm.
Being able to distinguish the difference between the culture, like for example, obviously I'm a minority, so I was
Hmm.
watching something and it was talking about a tiger mom. Like, what's a tiger mom? But a tiger mom, apparently, and from the content that I was watching, is an Asian mom, that's hard on their kids and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
like they're like, Asian moms really don't show love or whatever. But if they have that tough love, then how could you like engage that type of culture? Do you embed yourself in there, or like you were saying, you just it all start with conversation?
No, it's important, as providers, to educate yourself on your community, whatever cultures in your community. You want to educate yourself so that you understand their values, their beliefs, and what's considered disrespect. Sometimes when you're standing over certain people while they're sitting down, that could be a sign of disrespect. You just have to understand what their perception of health is, and you just have to meet them where they are with that, and let them know, hey, I know about your culture, I understand, I've studied. And that, when you show that, that develops that strong relationship, that trust, that you need in culture. Say, hey, this person really cares, because they know, don't touch my feet and then touch my head. There's certain cultures, Islamic culture, the head is holy, the feet is not, and you can't go around touching feet and head, feet and head, feet and head, and just being ignorant to people's culture. Just shows that, that lack of, hey, are you here to really take care of me holistically, or you're just doing your job? You know what I mean? So that's important to educate yourself about your community's culture and beliefs.
So let's start diving down into the stigma associated with mental health. And I probably should have led with that. So when people think of mental health, and I'm guilty of it, you usually think of like the homeless individual that you run it into that's talking out their head and stuff like that, right? But at the end of
Hmm.
the day, mental health is much more than that. I mean, at least I'm making an assumption. Can you clarify?
Yeah, yeah. It's actually the total opposite. It's actually that millionaire, that CEO, that entrepreneur, that mom. That's the person that's depressed. And like you said earlier, that mask that you put on for the community when you're really not feeling the greatest is something that you just, you know learn. It's like a learned thing to, oh, I got to get this done. Let me put on this mask. It's essentially a mask that you're putting on for the public. And when you get home, you take the mask off, and it's sad, and it's down, it's low motivation. You've given your all to whatever it is that you just did, you know. So that's kind of, it's tough, you know, because it's definitely the more affluent people, or the more normal day to day working people. The homeless people that you see, that you said is in their head, which I'm thinking you're meaning like having like some psychosis or some type of psychotic
Yeah.
issues. You know, that's just a totally separate, you know, diagnosis than depression, anxiety. You know, you got schizophrenia, paranoia, things like that, that they're in a whole nother realm, you know, but your day to day is depression and anxiety. So,
So a lot of things we're when we tell ourselves, "Hey, get over it, push through it." Now here, I might get canceled, but here's my thing, right?
I
What's
don't want
the
to go down with you. I don't want to go down with you.
here's my thing.
I'm
So what
not going. I gotta put me first. I'm not going down with you.
so what's the balance? What's the balance between being like too tough on the individual, right? Like, hey, like some things are just life, right? For example, a sensitive subject, death, when we grieve. In the black culture,
Mhm.
we grieve a little different. You know, we might jump in the
Mhm.
casket or something, right? Other cultures might not
Right.
grieve the way we
Yeah.
grieve.
Latin culture as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if Big Mama passed away, right? Another culture might go to the memorial, go to the funeral, go to the wake, the repast, or whatever.
Mhm.
2 days later, they're back at work. In our
Mhm.
culture, you might need more days. You see what I'm saying? So, like,
Yeah.
what's the balance? You know, that's I guess socially acceptable.
There's no real balance because you can't really tell any body or group or anything how to grieve. But there is a thing called, you know, extended grieving, when you're 6 months down the line and you're still crying every day. You can't work, you can't do anything. And sometimes that is a mental health issue when you have, you know, an extended grieving process. And sometimes you need, you know, therapy or medications, you know, to kind of help you with that.
So that's something that, so if you find yourself stuck in that cycle, then you know you need medication, you need more help. And in the case of that, being transparent, just want to use myself as a case study. I think that when we're honest, we get better conversations. So, for example, my niece passed away 7 years ago, right? And I grew. She was 12, so I mean, this is like 10 years ago, something. So I grieved. I thought at the time, but like kept living and life pushed on. But I would say like last month, out of nowhere, it's just like it just hit me like it was fresh. What
Mhm.
in comparison to being sad every day over and over to like going years and then like a brick just drop on you.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
you're gonna
so
have
you're
the
gonna
hit
have
and misses,
and listen.
you know. So you're gonna have
You're
moments
gonna have
where,
one.
okay,
Like,
it hit
oh,
me, I'm
you
thinking
hit me.
about
I'm
it, I'm
thinking about it.
sad.
I'm sad.
Um,
Um,
and
and
I wouldn't
I would
consider that
consider
like a form
a
of
form of
depression because that's something that we naturally go through, you know. Um, Depression is usually something that occurs for two weeks. You know, 2 weeks straight, you're having, you know, lack of motivation, difficulty concentrating, um, difficulty sleeping, suicidal ideations. There's actually a form, a PHQ form, that kind of help you better understand what's depression, or, you know, am I depressed? You know, that's a scale that we use to kind of gauge the pretty much your depression, and it gives us a number, and we can say, okay, this is mild depression, this is moderate depression, you know, whatever it may be. I have that form. Well, you
I'm
should
a,
have that form.
I'm trying to pull it up now. Yeah, so let me go ahead and share the screen. So This is a standardized form.
Yeah, it's called a PHQ-9. It has 9 questions, and they're pretty much asking, have you felt this way in the last 2 weeks? Because you can have depression that's reoccurring, and you can have a single episode of depression, and they both should be treated. A single episode is okay. I'm not always depressed. I've been depressed for the last 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and sometimes you just got to get out of that funk, and you need help to pull you out of that. And it's
So let
not
me.
always medication. So that's another thing that scares people, to admit that I'm depressed. You don't always get, oh, you're depressed, your score is high, let me give you medication. There's other options. There's therapy options, you know, meditation and things like that. You don't always jump to medication.
That's good to know. What's up, Hustler TV? What's up, Tim? Can you see that?
Hi.
Can you see that form? I don't know, on your
Yeah,
phone.
I can. Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. Not really, but I know that
But
form like the back of my hand.
the material you were talking about just now.
Yeah, like you with yeah, that's the exact scale, right there. And they're pretty much asking, have you felt, depressed? It's not at all, things like that. And let me see. Yeah. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
this is not it. That is the GAD score.
All right.
That's for
All
anxiety. We
right.
can
So
speak
let.
about that score. We can speak about that while you have it up.
Yeah, please.
Another thing with, like, yeah, anxiety presents itself in several different ways. Like, generally people think, oh, I have to be anxious to say I have anxiety. It doesn't always present that way. It presents with difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating, excessive worrying about, say you're worrying about, oh, I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get to work tomorrow. My car is in the shop. I gotta figure out how to get to work tomorrow. Um, Normally you'll think about it, try to figure out a solution, and kind of worry about it a little bit. When anxiety is just ruminating thoughts, constant, all day, and to the point where you have gotten irritable. When you have that excessive worrying that causes irritability, that's something to address. When you can't get sleep, upset stomach, things like that. That's forms of anxiety.
So me the last couple of days.
Pretty much. But see, situational anxiety is not something that I would treat. When you have normal anxiety to normal things, that's just situation anxiety. And
Okay.
I'm not saying that that's just, but it is situation anxiety where anyone would get a little bit of anxiety from that. But then you have generalized anxiety, which this scale uh, helps us with the diagnosis of generalized anxiety, when you're just anxious. You're just worrying about everything. These thoughts are going on all the time about every little thing, and it's that generalized anxiety.
So someone walk into your clinic, right? And
Hmm.
you rate them on this, and they have a score that indicates, hey, this person has anxiety. And not only do they have anxiety, but they kind of high on the scale. What's the first form of treatment this individual?
Um, if they're high on a scale and they're not having panic attacks, then I would give them, definitely, I would offer them therapy, behavior therapy, or just to talk to a counselor. And if that doesn't work, and help them with different techniques, breathing techniques, meditation. I always want to try the least invasive, or the easiest route first, because sometimes that helps, the less complicated route. And if that doesn't work, then we'll go to prescribing anti-anxiety medications like you know, SSRIs or antidepressants. They work for anxiety as well. And but those take a while. They take 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks to work. So I don't want you sitting super anxious for all that time, waiting on that medication to work. So sometimes, there's medication, an antihistamine class that just decreases anxiety. And let me just say, this is for informational purposes only since we're talking about medications and things now. If you're having any issues, definitely go to see your doctor.
Yeah, this is not medical advice. We're talking generalized. Uh, uh, so I hear you, but the thing that's sticking in my mind right now is when you say situational anxiety, right? And then not your words, but my word, like someone that have chronic anxiety, right? Severe anxiety that just worry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about people, different cultures grieve differently or whatever, and I shared my story, and you was like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it happens, but as long as you're not, we were talking about depression at first, as long as you're not having those feelings every day, you're not stuck in those cycles every day. But we pull up this scale, and we're trying to get to the depression scale. The anxiety of an individual that's having panic attacks, right? And they know that they have anxiety, and you've been treating them for a while. Is it gratifying when you see a person that comes in that's basically, for lack of a better terminology, again, my words, not yours, is a wreck, and then watch them start to get their life back? Is that, I mean, what type of feeling you get from that?
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of why I do what I do because with ketamine, which is it acts as an antidepressant. So that gratification is kind of almost, you know, immediate, especially if they're having suicidal ideations. But even if I'm treating a patient with an antidepressant and I see that they're feeling better, they're less anxious, they can focus more, they're doing better at work, doing better at school, things like that. Absolutely, that is gratifying because it's like these people are getting like a piece of their life back, because this mental health can take over. It can take over. If your brain is saying we're not doing this, sometimes it's like, yeah, we're not doing it. Today you will lay down all day. You're not going to work, you're not getting in the shower, you're not doing any of that.
What about how you explained it to me last time? The the neuron passages or pathways in your brain. If I say, am I saying it correctly? Like you were saying, like sometimes people with mental health issues, illness, like it's like those connections are not, they get
Yeah, the
overloaded.
synapses, yeah.
So explain. I mean,
Mhm.
you do a
Yeah.
better job.
Yeah, so basically a lot of times people, that stigma that we're talking about of depression is when they're like, oh, you can snap out of it, not just depression, just mental health. Oh, you can snap out of it, you're faking, you don't really feel that way, things like that, when they don't understand it is a chemical imbalance in the brain. Normally, our brain is communicating with the synapses, communicating with each other, releasing serotonin, norepi, dopamine, things that make us feel good, things that make us balance, because the body is always trying to balance itself. Homeostasis is always working to say, okay, if my temperature too high, let me regulate it. If I'm too upset, let me regulate it, things like that. So if you have that chemical imbalance where your brain is not allowing serotonin to be, you know used, or it's like now you have too much serotonin or too little serotonin, or too much or too little of any of the neurotransmitters, you know, that's where our depression and our anxiety and our OCD and all of those mental health things come into play. It's not something that you can just snap out of. It needs either, you know, a new way of learning, which is like therapy, or medication.
Man, that's awesome, man. Like the human body is amazing, but listening to you, the complexity of mental health, it's man. I mean,
Yeah.
people going to their field is literally doing God's work, right? Because nobody wants to admit that they are having certain thoughts, right, at certain times because they
Yeah.
don't want to label with a mental illness. And some of the
Mhm.
things that you're saying, it's not really, it's a form of mental illness, but it can be temporary or it can be, changing
Right.
your
It can be
illness.
reversed. It can be reversed. You're not always stuck with that. It can be in remission. It can be just you're better. You just got to get that help and don't be afraid to ask for it. That's what my thing is. That's what I want to make sure that people are comfortable, speaking to providers about that and not feel judged, and you don't have to take your family with you. You don't have to tell anybody. That's something that you should definitely get addressed, get help. That service is there for everyone. You know what I mean? Just not one type of people. It's there for everybody to use it.
Man, that's awesome. I think this is the document you was looking for earlier. Is this it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And this is the this is how you gauge depression.
That's how I would gauge if a person's been, for the last 2 weeks, if they've been depressed, and how much has this depression affected relationships with family, work, and things like that. And I'll address it from there. But that helps people understand a little bit of what depression is, kind of like the signs that you wouldn't even think that's occurring is depression. Like, if I didn't know, I would say, okay, depression is just when I'm sad. And that's just it. When I'm sad for I'm depressed. And we use that a lot in the terms of I'm feeling down, I'm depressed, and then tomorrow you're feeling better. So you're not really depressed. You're not really a depressed person. You're just feeling down. Depression is something that occurs for 2 weeks straight. You're having these feelings. Naturally, we're going to have up and downs. We're going to respond um, sadly or happily or whatever the case to life. You have situational things or episodic things that occur, and that's okay for you to be sad, okay for you to be happy, but long as you're not stuck in that sadness, that difficulty concentrating, difficulty, sleeping, and just not a clear head. All of those things will kind of let you know, okay, maybe I am a little depressed or a lot depressed.
Yeah, that's man. So when I see like poor appetite or overeating,
Mhm.
and feeling tired or having little energy, right? That can be anybody at any given day. But what you're explaining to us is that there's levels to it. But before you answer that, let me ask the chat a question. Jeanette, you say you hear feedback, but you still hear it. Let me know if you still hear the feedback. Because I don't have any speakers or anything on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I've been hearing it already for a while.
All right. I don't know what's going on. Uh, well, it was a struggle getting on anyway. It was a
Well, I'm just
struggle.
happy that we can hear.
Yeah, it was a struggle getting on anyway. Um,
Mhm.
so let's dive into this. And again, thank you for your time. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm just
No
trying
problem.
to I'm trying to create scenarios that I had personally in my life or that will never all right, so it's my mic. So I'm going to fix my mic after I ask this question. So I try to speak from personal events or scenarios that I had or things that I think other people might want to get a answer to. So I guess the next question would be, we talk a little bit about minority men. What about the pressures of I'm not going to say minority women, but we could address minority women also first, but women in general, especially since the latest Supreme Court ruling. And you don't have to get political. We're just talking about everyday pressures, and I'm going to work on this mic.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to talk about men and, minority men and minority women, because we're pretty much, raised the same in a sense of not expressing or being able to express your true feelings. In fear of being judged, in fear of someone finding out and making fun of you, or fear that taking medication in general, and trust. That's a big thing in the African American community, is developing that trust with that healthcare provider, because we're always second guessing, like, is this medication really working? Is it gonna work? Is it gonna do something weird to me? Like, what's the deal with that? Um, so can you hear me okay? Can you guys hear me out there? Oh, okay. Well, I kind of got sidetracked, so now I don't
That's
even
all right. I can hear
know.
you. I
I
had
can
mute
hear you.
myself. I had mute myself to
Okay.
try to get rid of the echo noise. I don't know if I got rid of it or
Yeah,
not.
it's
I did.
better. Yeah, it's a
All
lot
right.
better.
All right. I didn't want to just come in with a loud noise because I don't hear it on my end, and you were speaking, so
Yeah,
you
no,
was
it's a
good.
lot. It's a lot better. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So they was able to hear you. Hey, last. Hey, so all right. Full disclosure, guys. I told her just be herself. All right, just be herself. Don't be nobody else. All right. So last time, this platform is new to Miss Nicole. All right. So when we did the interview last time, I put her on solo image, and so she no longer seen me. She thought she was just. She thought.
Yeah,
What did you think? You thought you was in an
I was
interview by
having
yourself?
a lot of situational anxiety. I can tell you that. You
So
know,
we not.
because it looks like you're just talking to yourself. So I'm like, now I'm trying to see, like, oh, is my eyelashes right? Like, what's happening here? Because now I'm looking, using it as a mirror at this point, and I can't even concentrate on what you know I was talking about.
So,
So,
So I told her just be yourself, man. It was funny. One of the things I want to do right now, also before I forget, you give me like a bunch of like information. I just want to cut and paste that into
hmm
now. This is on the YouTube platform, right? So I'm gonna go back in the description on Facebook,
yeah,
and I'm gonna post that information over there also. But these are like a lot of
okay.
great reference links and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also wanted to speak on, I brought up the gender roles in African American men, or Latin men, but there's also gender roles in women. I want to make sure that I address that too. African American women and the things that we you know hide. The stress, that increased stress. You know how they have post traumatic stress disorder. There's a such thing as acute, stress disorder that could affect you in that same manner, but for short periods of time. Dealing with being a mom, a wife, employee or employer, friend, family. Sometimes we're everything to everybody, usually, and that's mostly that woman's or African American woman role. I'm not even gonna say African American woman. A woman's role in general is a lot. Being everything to everybody, you can get overwhelmed, and you can get overwhelmed. You can have, where you shut down, you withdraw, you isolate yourself. So it's important when you're feeling that way, you have to take a break. You have to tell people, you're not superwoman. You can't take on everything. You have to protect your mental health. I need a break. I can't do that. No, yes, it's going to happen. If it's developing constantly and it's a chronic thing, get help. Like I said, it doesn't always have to be medication. It could be therapy. It can just be learning behaviors, things that you didn't even know existed that would help you. Oh, breathing exercises, all kind of different things that you can do to help relieve some of that stress that we take on as individuals.
People just don't realize how difficult it is to focus when you feel like you don't have control of your mind or of your body. And I'm not talking about like in this schizophrenic type of way that I was mentioning
Hmm.
earlier. I'm talking about like in the
Yeah,
sense like where I was when I found myself about 7 months ago, right? Sick, not knowing what's wrong with me, no energy, not being able to do the things you used to do. It's real defeating. It's hard to get up every morning, right? And like you said, there's
right.
a lot of things you can do that may not even be related to medically, breathing exercise, yoga, lifestyle change
Yeah.
that could just,
So,
because it's just amazing. It's when you, as a novice, when you look at the science, if you eat a balanced meal or you get certain nutrition, then your body's going to function a certain way. And then what you were talking
right.
about earlier, those connections being made in your mind is either you're resting better, your body's more efficient, but
Yeah.
it can happen to anybody at any time, just like that. Your hormones or your
Yeah,
chemicals
because stress
just get out of
can
whack.
knock that right out. Yeah. Being highly stressed, you have certain transmitters and hormones and things like that that's developing in your body. And what I look at it like as, if you're creating a lot of traffic in your brain and certain, serotonin or neurotransmitters cannot get to these receptors so that you can function and think correctly, because you got all this traffic in the way now. You got stress, worrying, uh, everything just in the way, in the way, in the way. So now this neurotransmitters that help with depression can't get to that receptor because it's like, oh, let me stop here. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, wait, stress is taking over this receptor and I can't even get on it because they're blocking it right now. So you can't even get what you need. And that's what creates that chemical imbalance a lot of the time. Sometimes it just organically happens, but when you're stressed, you create that chemical imbalance. And when you're chronically stressed, now your brain is so used to having all that traffic, having receptors being blocked by stress and anxiety and things like that, that other, neurotransmitters can't get onto those receptors to kind of help that balance in your body and help you think correctly, that now it's just not producing the transmitters that it needs to produce to decrease, that depression or anxiety and depression and anxiety is kind of married. If you're depressed, most time you're going to be anxious. If you're anxious, you're going to be depressed because I'm anxious. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So it's like, oh, you're going around in a circle. I'm anxious because I'm depressed. I'm depressed because I'm anxious. Now it's just like, you know, so
it's
you got to
like
be
which one
mindful
to
of that.
go.
Like,
That's crazy because like you can be like a functional chronic. You could be you could be a person that's able to function but have chronic anxiety because you develop, or chronic stress because you develop coping mechanisms. If I heard you correctly?
mhm, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's important to check on your people for real, because those happy people that's making you laugh, that's busy in the community, that's doing all this other stuff, those are the people you got to watch out for. Because when they get home, they've given you everything that they had, the little bit of, you know, happiness uh, that they had. And when they get home, they're just like, I'm done. I'm tired of constantly faking like I'm happy or constantly, pushing myself. And those are the people that's more suicidal, that have those ideations that they are okay with not waking up. You know, you have suicidal ideations that's active, that's like, okay, I don't want to live anymore. I have pills that I'm going to take my life. That's more of an active plan with suicidal thoughts. Then you have a passive plan as well, when you're like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, I'll be okay with that. That's still suicidal thoughts, and it's not, I don't want people to be afraid to express that, because when it's just, I feel like, you know, I'm okay with not waking up. That's not something we'll be like, okay, call the people in, they got to go, because it's passive, you know, thoughts that you need help. You need to get medication and get you out of that mindset, but it's always important if you're having active or passive, you need to express that, you need that help. You're not thinking right, you know.
So bro, say, is it safe to say part of the recovery process is self-admittance that there is an issue within yourself? I mean,
Yeah,
in your
I mean,
experience, go ahead,
yeah,
go ahead.
to know that something isn't right, you know, um, is definitely the first step in any process, recovery process, depression, high blood pressure, diabetes. Like, you have to know, okay, I'm feeling weird, I'm dizzy, whatever the case. Let me admit that something's wrong so that I can go to the doctor. And a lot of times with men, they don't want to admit that something's wrong. They don't go to the doctor for 35 years. And when they go to the doctor's like, okay, you have this, that, you have hypothyroidism, high blood pressure, diabetes. And they're like, and that's why I don't want to go to the doctor. No, no, you
Yeah,
wait. You already
yeah,
had that for years. You should have been
yeah.
came. I'm just telling you what you had. Don't sit and say because you went after 35 years, you gotta get those regular checkups,
It's funny
um,
because men would say, I don't go to the doctor because they're going to find something wrong with me.
right. Because you should have been to the doctor years ago, 20 years
It's
ago, you should have went.
it's
So yeah,
crazy.
something's
That's
gonna be
crazy.
wrong.
Yeah,
You
that's
know.
crazy. So
Yeah,
you
you
touched on
you you
ginger
know.
rose, right? You touched. I'm sorry. I apologize. You touched on ginger
No,
rose,
go ahead.
right? And the
Mhm.
pressure that ginger rose can cause, and each culture have their own ginger rose or whatever.
Mhm.
I wanna touch on back to, and let me pull it up. This one of the references that you sent to me, and again I put it in the chat.
Mhm.
So back to women. When I was younger, I used to always be like, why women always want to be equal, right? Like y'all can't play sports like football and basketball like us or whatever. You're immature or whatever. It's like
Mhm.
boy versus girl, right? So then when you get older or whatever, you start liking girls and stuff, and first come love, then come marriage, etc. Right?
Mhm.
But now that I'm older, I look at women, I'm like, wow, as a man, I don't have an internal clock, right? Like there's no, like there's that. I mean, there's the internal clock, but that's nothing to say that if I get 45 and decide to have a kid, if I'm totally healthy, I can do that, right? So women, I ain't gonna say you guys have the stress of playing again the gender role to be married by a certain time, right? To have kids by a certain, and I'm generalizing, ladies. For all of y'all independent
Mhm.
women, I'm
Right. Right.
generalizing, right?
Right.
I'm
Right. Right. Right.
generalizing.
Right. Right.
Be married by a certain time, have kids by a certain time, right? And I want to say from right before Generation X, I want to say the baby boomers on up to now, women right now want to have the traditional gender roles, but also be successful in business, right? That's gotta be
Right.
stressful.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to gender roles, in a medical aspect, it's understanding what those roles are within that culture. Like, you have some cultures that the women don't speak, the men speak for the women, and some people, if you don't know any better, you'll go in there and get to talking, and the patient is a woman, you get to talking to the patient, and she's looking at her husband because he answers the questions for her. You have to understand that that's a gender role within that culture. Um, and with African American men, a gender role within our culture is strength. Being a provider, being strong, not showing any signs of weaknesses in any situation, even if it's at the doctor's office, whatever. You're strong. I'm good. Everything is okay. You know, but as far as what you were speaking about, as women wanting that equal, you know, rights or equal respect, you have to first understand that you know, we're taught to compensate because our black man has been prisoned, killed, um, taken away from the family. So as women, we had to learn that masculine role, and whenever a woman is playing more of a masculine role, and this is just my opinion, this is not a, you know, medical mental thing, whenever that woman is playing that masculine role, that's because she's compensating because there's lack of that masculine role within that household. So she plays that, and then you get to the point where a woman is just like, I'm doing everything that the men are doing. I want the same respect. You know what I mean? I just want, and now everybody's splitting, you know, financial obligations. Some, you got house husbands and all kind of stuff now. It's just modernized. I just heard some term. Yeah. You know what? I'm not even going to say it, but yeah, yeah. I'll leave it right there.
Now, so tell us what the future holds for you.
Well, I currently have a ketamine infusion business. I will be adding a lot of mental health um, um, medications and therapies and things like that. Also, speaking more, developing a platform to speak more about mental health. Basically, like I said, being that culture advocate for minorities, people in general, but minorities and especially African Americans, because you know, when I have an African American patient, it's like I could read them. Like I know, what's going on, and they understand because they feel so comfortable being like, I know you know what's going on, and you're not judging me. So now that I know that it's okay because you're telling me it's okay, and you're a healthcare professional letting me know it's okay, and I just want to be that advocate, for African Americans and letting them know if Billy Bob can have bipolar and get treated and feel better, so can Lawanda. You know what I mean? Like, it's no biases there. You know what I mean? Like, people have chemical imbalances. It doesn't matter your race. Just because you're African American doesn't make you stronger mentally as far as what's going on in the brain. And I just want to share that with the world, and just being me in the process, so people from where I'm from was like, oh yeah, if she says okay, cool, let's go talk to her and figure
Yeah.
out what's going on with me. You know what I mean? So I just want to be that person for the culture, really.
Yeah.
And I'm opening more clinics.
Yeah. Obviously, right? That's a no-brainer. I
Yeah.
always found it like fascinated. I mean, you know my background. Okay, so
Hmm.
when I look back on my life, I like currently, you can't make this up. While I'm alive, my phone ringing. You know why? Calls from jail. You know why? Because it's the 8th. I mean, it's the 11th, right? And some people haven't got money put on their books. Okay, now
Hmm.
I'm not saying that I'm up here putting money on 1,000 people books, but I have cousins and friends that's either locked up
Hmm.
or dead. Okay, and you grow
Yeah.
up in that environment, and then you come out into the world, and by the time you're 19 or 21, you like you done buried 20, 30, sometimes half of your friends. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
Right.
that gotta do. I'm just that's gotta do something to people's psyche, right? And it gotta explain why certain classes of people respond certain ways. I mean,
Yeah.
soldiers when they come home from a war zone, man, like they gotta get therapy.
Yeah, some of them, yeah, because you have the post-traumatic stress disorder. When you're having, real feelings that you're in that situation again. You're reliving what you were living when you were, serving. And then you also have, hi, you also have when you're experiencing a lot of death around you, you become, and lack of a better word, like numb to those things. Death don't affect you the way that, you know, it affects other people that don't deal with that, and that's something that, has to be kind of relearned again, because you don't want to be numb to things like that, like death, and then you become numb all around, and then you almost develop like an antisocial personality sometimes when you don't. And antisocial doesn't mean I don't want to socialize with you. An antisocial personality is more of a personality where, you know you don't have empathy for what other people are going through. Like, you'll see a person crying because they just lost someone, and you're sitting there like, oh, how do I try to shed a tear? What should I say? Should I pat him on the back? But your emotions is just blank because you're now have like kind of control, not in a controlled learning setting, but more of a like, you learn to compensate like that, and now that's a way that you think. But that's, like I said, that's almost signs of an anti-social personality because you just don't care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, man.
Yeah.
These conversations can get really deep, and like the more I listen to everything that you're saying, it's just amazing that we don't have more advocates in this space, especially for
Yes.
minorities. Now, let me get more information, because last time you was on, you was telling me that you was in the process, or you was looking to create a nonprofit. You want to share a little bit more
Well,
about that with us?
yes, actually, there's a nonprofit, the Michael J. Lassiter Foundation. He was my patient, and he was a close friend of the family. And opioid use disorder. He passed from that, and you know, it's up and running. It's just certain tweaks that's still going on. I think it's the Michael J. Lassiter Foundation, and I'll leave you the information,
Man,
down
awesome.
the
Awesome.
exact information.
We're,
But
we're
yeah,
definitely going to be getting you back on the shore more regular. We're going to create a
yeah, and maybe
schedule.
we can talk about, ketamine.
Yeah,
That's definitely a hot topic.
that.
Ketamine. Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
that's a big stigma. Ketamine's
All
a
right.
huge stigma behind ketamine,
What you
and I want
mean?
to
Explain it.
dispel. I want to dispel those stigmas. We've already dispelled the stigma of mental health. I've touched on that. You have ketamine. People are like, "Oh, it's a horse tranquilizer. Oh, it's you know, they call it by the street drug name. It does this. It does that." And not
That's the
understanding
stuff. That's
how
the stuff people was
well.
taking for COVID.
No, that's like they call it Special K, a date rape drug, animal tranquilizer. What it is it's an anesthetic. That's what it's FDA approved for. An anesthetic. They give it to kids a lot to put them under anesthesia, or give it to kids and adults to say if you got a dislocated shoulder, they want to give you something that's gonna kind of knock you out so that they can put it back into place. It's a medication, but in low doses, it's shown. It's been several double-blind studies. That in double-blind studies, I think I spoke about that on the last show. Is when you have people that's getting the fake medication, and you have people that's getting a real medication, but no one knows, and they're being questioned about their responses. And that kind of, if you have a significant response, that's positive. If they have a significant response of the medication, that's changing things, that giving the effect that you're looking for. But anyway, ketamine at low doses have been proven to show evidence-based practice that it decreases depression, anxiety, PTSD, chronic pain, and things like that, because it does create new neural pathways in the brain, um, and it promotes those connections that you were missing, and and it works a lot faster than your traditional antidepressant, which, like I said, you have to wait for 12 weeks sometimes before that traditional antidepressant work. Ketamine works within minutes to days, you know. Um, so it's definitely something that's on the rise, something that I'm passionate about. Um, it doesn't have the weird side effects sometimes that other medications can have, but it's important that, sometimes you have to take the antidepressant and the ketamine. But and it's an infusion. You get an IV, you get an infusion, you're monitored, safe. If it's given in a safe atmosphere with a medical professional, it's a game changer. It's changed
So let me.
people's life.
So, so you said it last time, and I'm a good student, so I remember. But I want you to tell the audience again. Why are you laughing? I remember. I do. I want you to tell the audience again. Um, so when you take it, and I'm gonna get to some the I think we got 2 questions in the comment section. Um, how long does it last, right? And to prove that I'm a good student, the about a month, right?
Yeah, it can last about 21 days, but with therapy and antidepressants, it could be, you know, last, it's no telling. I just haven't been enough studies to follow people to say, oh, it's been 10 years that you're still feeling bad. I have certain patients that would come, once every 6 months. A year I haven't seen them, and they're like, well, I didn't come because I'm feeling great, and it's just because it changed by neuroplasticity, meaning that created a
Say
new
that big word
pathway.
again. Say that big word again.
Neuroplasticity.
I'm gonna go rewind that. I'm gonna practice that. They're
Yeah.
gonna be next time I'm reviewing a product. I'm gonna be like, I love. You see this? It's shaped just like the neuroplasticity in your brain.
No. And then
No,
it's gonna be a big X that say
but that's
the
not it. That's
wrong
how you
name.
use it. And they
No,
ain't gonna know
no.
because I don't know it. They ain't gonna know because I don't know
Right.
it. I'm sorry.
Well,
Go
it's
ahead.
it's changing so that we know now our new word of the day, neuroplasticity. It changes the pathways in the brain. Um, because when you're depressed, your brain, I like to look at it as a GPS. I probably mentioned this. Your brain is so used to going the same route home every day. This is what I know by heart. This is how I get home. I don't care if it's traffic. I don't care if they shut the road down. I know no other way. That's how depression is. I wake up every day feeling like this. And what ketamine does is it comes in and that acts as a GPS to be like, hey, make this left, make this right. Look how fast you got home. You see in the world differently. It created a new pathway for you to think differently instead of that same depression pathway that you've been going. Now you can make that left, bust that you. Hey, I'm happy now. I feel better. You know what I mean? So, and it does more than that. I would have to get deeper into, you know, ketamine and how it works as far as blocking receptors. Because a lot of times when you're depressed, you have, remember how I said the stress and the depression, it blocks
Yeah,
those
yeah.
receptors and it doesn't allow, yeah, ketamine kind of adheres to those receptors and it kind of blocks the stressors and the NMDA and things like that to allow your GABA and glutamate. Don't let me get into these big words, y'all, but GABA and glutamate to kind of come in because when you're depressed, your body's like, we don't want any party animals over here. We want all depressed neurotransmitters. If you're not depressed, you can't join this club. Ketamine comes in and it acts as a bodyguard, like, okay, now we're letting the party animals in so that you can feel happier, because without certain medications, your body is just trained to say, we only want party poopers only. You know what I mean?
Like
Until
like
something
those
comes
thoughts.
on, pushes it off, and be like, oh,
Yeah.
come through the back
All right.
door, the party over here, and then now you didn't lighten it up.
Just those repetitive thoughts, like you start going down that rabbit hole. You're thinking about Big Mama passing away. Now you're thinking about Big
Hmm.
Daddy. Now you're thinking about great Big Daddy that you never met, right? And now you're looking at a dead aunt or something. Like, you just, everything is just
Like you
depressing,
just
right?
right, and you can't. Like I said, when you're thinking
And
like
you
that for
looking
so
for that, you
long,
actively looking for that feeling. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
right? No, no, yeah. When you're thinking like that for so long, your mind is now trained to think like that. You know what I mean? So you're gonna always think negatively or be pessimistic because you have trained your brain sometimes to think like that can push you into depression, you know. So
What about people who self-diagnose themselves, right? So like somebody's watching this, or they're gonna watch the replay, and they're gonna look at their skill, right? And they're not gonna be as skilled as you to add up the numbers and give a diagnosis, right? Like for example, oh, I can't
right,
sleep, I can't eat, I have anxiety, So
yeah,
again, the best way is to talk to a professional. Yeah, no, what?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could use those skills to say, maybe I am depressed. Let me seek out some help. So you definitely can use it. You're not self-diagnosing. You're kind of just using that scale, you know, to help you gauge if you're depressed or not.
To see if it's something you need
Definitely
to
use the
examine.
scale out, but doesn't mean that you're going to be diagnosed with it. It's all sort of different things. You definitely need to see a healthcare provider
So bro,
to know.
say, what is your therapeutic approach to initiate the conversation for standoff people?
Meaning, like, as a healthcare provider, or just advice um, for people to address standoff people.
Let's just generalize. I think we'll
Okay.
be safe.
I mean, honestly, if a person is standoffish, it could be for several reasons. It could be a personality disorder, and you probably want to just let them be, because it's personality disorder, and their brain is not functioning to be communicating. You even have, personality disorders where people are super clingy, and people just think, oh, they're just clingy. No, some people have like borderline personality disorders where if you leave them, they're like, oh, I'm gonna cut myself if you leave me. Oh, you've been gone too long. I just the house is broken into just making stuff up because of that emotional connection that they need, because mentally that's how they're wired. But if you have a person that's standoffish, they can be antisocial, they can be anxious, they can have social anxiety, and you don't want to push that. So I would say you want to first just approach lightheartedly, and slowly, you know what I mean, until you figure out what's the reason. You got to figure out, got to get to the core of why they are standoffish. Is it just towards you, or is it in life?
Yeah,
you
towards
know
everybody.
did
Yeah.
you do something to them? I mean, so many different things you got to address. So you got to, I guess the core thing is to figure out um why.
She was talking about ketamine, not cannabis, Giorgio. She was talking about ketamine, and she's going to come back on the show. Yeah, I have the green light to get her wherever I want now. So one phone call, that's all. I ain't revealing my secret weapon. One phone
I'm
call,
about
that's
to
all.
diagnose you. I'm
Hey.
gonna diagnose you with a disorder.
So bro,
I got the
so
right
we'll have
one.
so we'll have another excellent question. Does socioeconomics disparities and stigmas play a part in minority mental health care?
Oh gosh, yes, that's
I
a
know.
huge
I
disparity
believe I
gap
believe
within.
he could have said the same thing without those words, but go ahead.
No, no, I like those. Uh, I got you. So it's a huge disparity gap um, within minorities, because you also have, um, you know, access to health is one of the disparities. Um, Another disparity is, you know, financial literacy, not having those resources, um, not understanding, communities, if communities offer certain healthcare providers shortages in certain communities where minorities are. All of those affect mental health, because if you don't know that you can get help from one, like healthcare education, nutritional education, financial education, all of those could be disparities if people are not knowledgeable about, there's free healthcare out there. There's, what are my resources? And if there's even resources, like I said, the shortages, it always creates that social economic gap where it's and that's something that we as healthcare providers have to address and understand, that disparities is not a single problem. It is a, society problem. And everyone has to join in to fix it. I can only do so little for my community to try to close those disparity gaps. But what about my people in Chicago or Louisiana, whatever the case? I can't fix those, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Man, there's more people than we tend to imagine that's dealing with things. Sometimes we just think that, hey, something's wrong with me. I'm the only one feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, the role I play as a minister, sometimes you get caught, and especially being like the chaplain of the police department, when
Mm-hmm.
there's a deceased person and the family requests some type of religious ceremony, not ceremony, but comfort or whatever they call it, chaplain,
Yeah.
or the chaplain might have to go do like death notifications or something like that. So when you
Mm-hmm.
see enough people at their worst, then you kind of realize that, man, a lot of us are in the same boat. And as you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier, a lot of us just putting that mask on, right? But when we go
Yeah.
home at the end of the night and our head hit the pillow, tears come down our eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And so
Exactly,
what
because you take in so much,
what we're
you
trying
know.
to say tonight is, reach out, seek help, talk to a professional. I know talking in general is good.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for like choosing the individual you talk to? Because sometimes, you might be talking to your homeboy, right? That grew up in similar circumstances, and you might not get the best advice. I guess that's the way I can put it politely. How do,
Yeah.
because sometimes you feel like, well, I'm glad I got that off my chest, but did you really?
Right, right. You have to create, either you have a good supportive group or you have to create a supportive group, even if it's online. Sometimes speaking to your friend, he might start laughing and being like, "You acting weak right now, like you tripping, whatever the case." And then that's gonna immediately cause you to be withdrawn and be protective of your emotions, because you just told one person and they immediately shot you down, immediately judged you. So now you're like, I'm not saying nothing to nobody else. So you have
Yeah,
to be careful with who you choose to speak to. And if you don't know if you can speak to that person or not, text them, give them like a weird scenario and see how they respond. If they respond weird, then you can't express your true deep down feelings with them. And that's somebody you need to not eliminate or anything like that, just not express those type of, you know, feelings with them. Just you can find all kind of support groups. I left that list, which helps as well find support groups and therapies and things like that if you want to talk to somebody.
man, that's awesome, man. Like, I think that's some of the. I mean, you give out a lot of great information tonight, but I think that's like one of the realest things I ever heard. And I think I'm going to share that with more people. Is the little bit that you just said, is that the way I kind of interpret it is, if you know something is wrong with you and you want to share it with somebody, still protect yourself. Make
Yeah, you
sure that
have
that
to
person
protect
is,
your mental health. Yeah.
yeah, because sometimes we just be ready to talk to anybody,
Yeah,
especially
and,
relate.
and be understanding too. I just want to leave that. Be understanding of what other people could be potentially going through. They could be going through a mental health issue that you don't know, and they accidentally bumped you, and you're like, "What?" And now they just snap because they're already up here. So just be mindful if someone has a where they have this emotional outbreak. Like, don't be quick to respond with violence. Just sit and think that this person have this crazy day, that this happened, that they lose their house, that they lose their family, and I just bumped into them and they just let loose. Do you respond to that? Because sometimes those people don't have nothing to lose and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're exactly what I needed today. Let me get this anger out, everything else that I've had going on with me, and take it out on you." So just try to be a little bit more calmer and try to look at situations a little bit differently. Um, just understand people are going through mental health issues that you have no idea, so I'll say that.
That's a whole nother show. Is ketamine.
Don't start. No, it
Hold
ain't.
on, hold on, hold on. But another show after that, another show after that is um conflict resolution. Man, I know a lot of people don't know how to deal with conflict resolution. So what you kind of alluded to just now is like you know how to approach people. It's hard for men, bro, especially if you're from the hood, bro. It's hard because it's like
Right? Because that's it. And what a lot of people don't understand, how you'll hear this story is, such and such got in a fight with such and such over a pork chop sandwich. And then he's like, nah, it wasn't a pork chop sandwich. It was the fact that he ate it and said, and what? It's how you
mhm,
responded to eating my
mhm.
sandwich. You know what I mean? And people don't get that. They feel like, oh, it was minor. It's the disrespect that came with that. But as people, we have to try and we gotta let stuff go. Everything don't have to have a
But we
response
have,
and come
but
back
we
or
have a
get back.
whole generation. We have a whole generation that created a whole genre called drill music that's specifically talking about
That's from
killing
Chicago.
people
I'm not,
and
no comment.
smoking,
No,
smoking people, killing people. Well, we know Chicago people. We know Chicago people, right?
that's what drill music came from, right?
So, but literally, like, so you got a whole generation that's emotionally, what it appears to be emotionally disconnected. And look, I'm not picking on younger people because every generation had a stigma, right? So it's y'all turn, get it?
Mm-hmm.
We had it's y'all turn, but it appears that they've been emotionally disconnected, right? And they're living this fantasy in this fantasy world. Like they
Mm-hmm.
literally will kill somebody then rap about it and get mad when they get a RICO charge. Like they
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
they don't have that connect. So it's let me know that there's a lot of mental illness out there in the community to where you can do things like that and it's normalized. You spoke about that earlier. Like you
yeah,
see it
yeah.
every day. It's normalized. Like you literally live in a war zone. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's certain places you can go, and I'm not talking about Chicago. I'm talking about many places in the U.S. because I have traveled and been in a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
communities organizing. Like there's literally certain places you can't go, certain things you can't wear. I seen a report today that a lady called 911. It was last night. Called 911. She seen a woman getting taken advantage of. She was unconscious. She called the police. By the time police got there, the guy was gone. I heard another report today that officer, I'm talking about in New Orleans, walked off the
Mm-hmm.
job because when he got to work, it had 40 people on hold. It had 38
Wow.
officers. It had 38 officers to patrol that district. Now I don't know how big that district is or whatever, but it got over
Mm-hmm.
300,000 people in New Orleans with 38
Right.
officers patrolling the district. So all of these things going on in the community, right? And we're taught like the street code. We're taught like this and that. And I'm going down the rabbit hole. Y'all know how I do, and I get to talking. You know, if you don't know now, you know. But
And the minister get to ministering.
yeah, yeah. So, so when you put all that in perspective, right? Like it go back to my earlier point that have to have something going on in those individual's mind growing up in those circumstances, seeing violence every day, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
we create our own codes, like I was saying, our own rules, and then people say, well, black people are more inherently violent because look how many of y'all are incarcerated compared to the percentage that y'all make up. Now, again, I tell people all the time that the people that do stats for a living, figures can lie and liars can figures. You can make any numbers do anything. But I can tell you this from
Mm-hmm.
firsthand experience. Where I live at, there's a place called a country club where people got a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
white,
Okay.
have influence. And then that's where I'm from, right? I didn't grow up. I tell people I didn't grow up in the projects. I grew up in a brick home with a mom and dad, but the project wasn't far. Where you think I spent most of my days at? In the projects with my homies, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
I did the same thing with my black friends in the projects that I did in the country club with my white friends. The only difference is
Mhm.
when I went to my white friend's house, the mom was a doctor. Was a dentist. The dad was a dentist. The mom was a lawyer. One was a pill head. One was
Yeah.
an alcoholic. So they did their pills. They drunk. We smoked our weed. Nobody never came to the house and bothered us, right? Because they
Yeah.
stayed inside their home, right?
Right.
The
Uh-huh.
culture in the hood is we outside. So I'm
Yeah.
doing the
Yeah.
same thing, right? So it's just that that community is not over police. If somebody is watching me do something all the time, you're going to see me do something wrong, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to a community that's not over police, right? You're you're not going to catch them doing things. So I guess I said all that to say this is that whenever people give those statistics, I know from experience is that whenever a community is over police, you're going to find more people doing
Mhm.
bad things. It doesn't mean people is not doing bad things other places. It just means that you have more eyes on you. I should have just said the latter
Right.
part
Yeah. And it's
first.
yeah, no, it's okay. It's in poorer communities, it's the lack of resources that cause people to do crimes. The lack of resources, you putting people in jail for no reason. Now they got a record. Now they can't get a job, so they're back to doing the same criminal activities. And as far as killing, people, um, like you mentioned, killing people in the same race or whatever the case, you are a product of your environment. You are going to kill in your community. You're not going to go out and say, I'm going to go to the hills and get to fighting and killing. That happens within your community. That's the black on black crime or whatever the case. You have white on white crime. You have whatever. It's just the community that you're in, the lack of resources, the socioeconomic level, the financial level. When you are pulling these resources from us, it's a doggy dog world. And in order for it to be a change, I think that it has to be a young person from that community to speak up, because they're not going to hear us. They're going to hear somebody that's in it, or the same, they live that life. That's really what I think is going to change, the younger community, is that they need a one of their community advocates that they look up to, they trust, and they like, you know what I'm going through. Because if we say something, they're gonna be like, oh, shut up, whatever. You always talking about that. It has to be somebody in their community.
And I think that's the next step is to bring this conversation to younger people so they can start to develop. And I'm gonna say that my kids is way more in tune with themselves than I was. I far like emotionally,
Mhm.
and sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, what's the balance? Sometimes I'm like, man, y'all too soft. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think it's good to be in touch with yourself, but I don't know.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's a generational decline, because your daddy was tougher than you.
Yeah.
He was probably carrying barrels of hay on his back. And, I walked 3 miles, 14 miles to school, got home, worked, married at 16. Then here you come, like, oh, you tripping about the bus and this and that, when I
Yeah,
was walking
yeah,
to school
yeah,
every day. And now we're
yeah.
like, go outside, get off the TikTok, get off this, get off that. I think it's just a generational decline. And now this era of kids are techie. They're all about tech, mental, coding, um, online, social media, and things like that. That's their world. You know, like anything we done when we were younger, that's crazy. There's no footage because it wasn't the internet. It wasn't none of that proof.
MySpace,
Now
MySpace,
everything is filmed. Everything is
MySpace.
filmed now. It's like,
My-
what's happening? Get it on tape. You can
Yeah,
never live it down.
that's another. Golly, we didn't even get into like the aspect of like pressure from social media, right? So as a content creator, let me tell you guys, as a content creator, each time I turn this camera on, it's pressure, right? So like every time you creating content, in my case, I have clients, so the pressure to produce, but not only that, but the pressure to build an audience and the pressure to
Hmm.
stand out, right? Because you're not going to get an audience if you're not standing out, and it's just constantly going on and on and on. But on the opposite side of that, of the consumer of the content that's being created, people start measuring themselves by that content creator. And I'm like, y'all
Oh
just
yeah.
don't know, bro. Like, man, this don't measure yourself by me unless you're willing to lose sleep. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
man,
I
so
get
many
it.
aspects of it. So we usually do interviews at about an hour. We're a little over that. I want to give you ample opportunity to let the people know where they can find you at. I know you spoke about your clinic and stuff like that. You're looking to expand, so I don't know how that works, who
Mhm.
you need to contact, get in contact with. But if anyone is interested, guys, I'm gonna have her contact information in the description of the videos, or just send me an email and I get you that information. And like I said, I want to just give you this time to just share anything that you haven't had an opportunity to share. But prior to that, I want to put you on the spot. I need you to do more TikToks, man. I need you to do more TikToks.
That's funny you say that. I just created a TikTok for ketamine for mental health, just to dispel those myths. So I'm gonna be doing like questions of the day. It's MP Nikki Nicole is a TikTok, and I'll be doing questions of the day, answering questions, dispelling myths, speaking about mental health. Just little quick videos to answer questions and things like that. So I'm working on that. I just created it a couple of days ago, so still new, but I got a
So,
few things up there. But
so it's NPNIKKINICOLE. That's it.
yes,
All right.
yeah,
Put that in the chat. I'm sorry. Go ahead. So the
yep. No
TikToks are
pressure.
coming about ketamine. So we're gonna have some good ketamine TikToks.
Yeah,
I look,
some
I look
funny
forward.
humor, lighthearted. You know,
Hey guys, she's one of the best TikTokers in my opinion, man. She's so funny, bro. Like I just gotta know her personality, man. She's funny. So anything else? Well, I never give you opportunity to close because I jump on the TikTok. So go ahead. I'm not gonna put you on
oh,
solo. At this time of the interview, I usually put you on solo view where you can talk directly to the people. But I was threatened with physical harm before the show, so I'm not gonna do that.
right, because I'm still from the hood, so don't forget that. No, no, I really don't have anything to close with because I feel like I've said, everything that's important. Get your mental health addressed. Um, you know, it's a chemical imbalance. Don't feel like something is wrong. Don't fear being judged. You don't have to talk to your family about it. You can talk to, you know, professionals in a private setting. Just get it addressed. Don't feel any kind of threat. In closing, just like I said before, be open to other people's problems. Don't jump on everything. You don't have to get your lick back with everything, like verbal attacks. Like, let's try to just chill, as a whole, just to understand people could be going through things you have no idea. Um, Other than that, and ketamine therapies, microdosing mushrooms, psychedelic, that helps with depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and things like that. With less side effects. That's something to really think about as well. Um, and that's pretty much it. I'm
Man,
trying to make a change.
I, you know, I, I'm I'm so impressed, to be able to watch you on this journey, right? And knowing your passion and to be in this spot at in this moment of time and to listen to you share that passion, it you know it brings great joy to my heart to know that you are passionate about helping people in the area that so many of us, shy away from. So it takes a lot of courage to walk into that space and say, "Hey, look, I know it's not popular, but I'm going to make a change." So my hats off to you. As always, thank you
Thank
for coming
you.
on the show. Uh, Guys, thank you for tuning in. As always, you can always catch this on the replay. I said always a lot. It's that time of the evening. I'm going to jump back on the website. I've been promised you guys the 4KingCBD.com website was going to be live, and by God, it's going to be live by the end of the night. I don't care what I got to do, guys. I don't care if I got to get on a plane and fly to India and jump on the developer computer, but we're going to get it live some kind of way tonight. But thank you guys for coming out. Thank you guys for always being patient with me. And once again, thank you for our guest, nurse practitioner Nicole Smith. You guys be blessed. It's your boy
Thank you
taking
for
the
having
bathroom.
me.
Awesome. Don't forget to
Okay.
subscribe. But she's coming back, y'all. Like I said, I got that secret weapon. So the next one gonna be ketamine. Matter of
And
fact, y'all come with
I'm gonna close with one quote.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna close with one quote. I believe it's by Linda Pondexter. When addressing depression, one small crack. It's my favorite quote. One small crack, doesn't mean you're broken. So one small mental illness or, breakdown doesn't mean, you're broken. So,
Wow, that's powerful. We're gonna end it right there. You're
all
not broken.
right.
You're not
Nope.
broken.
Just a crack.
Wow. And cracks can be repaired. God bless y'all. You have
All
a
the
good night.
time. Okay, bye bye.